The Millionaire CEO walked into the wrong suite at a resort and froze at what he found. The soft hum of ocean waves blended with the faint piano music echoing through the marble hallways of the Crescent Bay Resort. The air smelled of salt and expensive perfume, a place where every glass shimmered and every guest seemed effortlessly perfect. Grayson Hale, founder and CEO of Halotech, did not come here for luxury. He came here to disappear. After months of boardroom battles and endless headlines calling him the heartless genius, he wanted silence. A valet handed him his keycard, smiling too brightly. "Suite 407, Mr. Hale. Enjoy your stay." Grayson nodded, his phone buzzing with unread messages, all from his assistant Caleb. He ignored them and took the elevator alone. The mirror walls threw back an image he barely recognized, a man in a tailored suit, eyes ringed with exhaustion. The elevator chimed. 4th floor. He followed the long corridor, carpet muffling his footsteps. When he reached the door marked 407, he tapped the card, heard the soft click, and pushed it open. The scent that greeted him was not the sterile hotel aroma of citrus and linen. It was paint oil and turpentine, alive and human. A woman's voice hummed faintly from inside. Then he saw her. A young woman sat barefoot on the floor, a brush in her hand, her auburn hair tied loosely, streaked with sunlight from the open balcony. The room around her was transformed canvases leaning against the wall, sketchbooks scattered like fallen leaves, a half-finished mural blooming across the far corner. Grayson froze at the threshold. For the first time in years, his mind went blank. The woman looked up, startled, her hazel eyes widening. "Oh, I am sorry, sir. This room is not open to guests yet." He blinked, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. "I think there must be a mistake," he said slowly, lowering his suitcase. "This is suite 407. She frowned, standing, wiping her paint-stained hands on a cloth. "No, this is 407. Maintenance said I could finish the mural before the client arrives." They stared at each other, both confused, both right. Then, almost on cue, his phone vibrated again. A message from Caleb flashed on the screen. "Change of plans. You are in 408, not 407. My fault." Grayson exhaled, half amused, half mortified. "Well," he said, "it appears I am the intruder." Koklo. Her lips twitched into a nervous laugh. "You could say that, but since you are already here, do you mind not stepping on the cobalt paint?" He looked down. Blue footprints trailed where he stood. He could not help it, he laughed. A real laugh, uncalculated and warm, the kind he had not heard from himself in years. "I will get out of your way," he said, but his voice had softened. "You paint for the resort?" "Just a temporary contract," she said, lifting a canvas. "Lila Hart. I decorate rooms people pay 10 times what I earn to sleep in." There was no bitterness in her tone, just quiet pride. Grayson nodded, memorizing her name. "Well, Miss Hart, consider your art the best part of this resort so far." She blinked, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. He gathered his suitcase and backed toward the door, still glancing around at the splashes of color, the life she had breathed into the sterile suite. "Sorry for barging in," he said. "Wrong room." But maybe the right mistake. The door closed behind him, leaving Lila staring after the stranger with the tired eyes and gentle smile. She shook her head, unaware that the man who had just stepped into her unfinished mural was one of the youngest millionaires in America, and that this mistake would soon change both their lives forever. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the glass walls of Crescent Bay Resort, painting the ocean in strokes of gold. Lila Hart woke to the sound of gulls and the hum of distant waves. The air smelled faintly of salt and paint thinner. Her hands were still smudged with cobalt blue from the mural she had been finishing the night before, the same mural that had witnessed her most awkward moment in months. She groaned softly, remembering the man who had walked into her room by mistake, Grayson Hale. She did not know his name then, but something about his calm voice and weary smile had lingered in her mind longer than it should have. Her phone buzzed. A message from her friend Tessa Monroe flashed across the screen. "How's the gig? Please tell me the resort is not making you scrub floors." Lila smiled faintly and typed back. "No scrubbing yet, just painting and bumping into strangers." She hesitated, then deleted the second sentence. By 8 o'clock, she was already back at work, balancing her sketchbook on her knees, capturing the morning light on the sea. Every brushstroke steadied her. She painted for survival, but it was the only time she felt free. The money from this job would barely cover her mother's next medical bill, but it was all she had. Across the resort, on the top floor, Grayson Hale sat in a corner suite with a view of the same ocean. He had swapped his usual Manhattan skyline for the open horizon of California, but the noise inside his head was the same. Emails, proposals, board schedules. He shut his laptop, leaning back, exhaling slowly. He had told his assistant Caleb Rowan that this trip was business, a meeting with investors. But deep down, he knew it was escape. After years of building Halo Tech from scratch, he had become everything he once promised he would never be: distant, mechanical, surrounded by people who smiled for his signature, not for his company. A knock sounded on the door. Caleb's voice carried through the crack. "Morning, boss. The marketing director will be here at noon. You good to meet them?" Grayson rubbed his temples. "Yes. Thank you, Caleb. And sorry about yesterday. The room mix-up." Caleb chuckled. "Donna from the front desk called. She swears it never happens. Guess even five-star resorts have off days." "Guess so," Grayson murmured, a faint smile crossing his face as he remembered the barefoot artist surrounded by sunlight and paint. Later that afternoon, he left the meeting early and walked through the resort gardens. He told himself it was for air, but part of him was searching for something or someone. The air was heavy with the scent of jasmine and the sound of the sea hitting the rocks below. When he passed the art wing near the lobby, he slowed. Inside, Lila stood on a small ladder, adding finishing touches to a mural of the ocean that curved across the wall. Her brush moved with quiet certainty. Her hair had escaped its tie again, and sunlight poured through the tall windows, painting her in gold. Grayson stopped, hands in his pockets, watching for a moment before clearing his throat. "I hope I am not interrupting another masterpiece." She turned, startled, then smiled in recognition. "You found the right room this time." "Barely," he said, glancing around. "Looks like you have been busy." "It is what I do," she replied, climbing down carefully. "You would be amazed what people leave behind in these rooms: empty champagne bottles, tears, memories. I just add color before the next story starts." Her words hit him harder than he expected. For a man who built an empire on logic and numbers, the simplicity of her truth felt disarming. "That is a beautiful way to see the world," he said quietly. Lila shrugged, dipping her brush again. "When you do not have much, you learn to find beauty in small things." Grayson studied her, sensing there was more behind that smile, something unspoken, resilient. "You make it sound easy." "It is not," she admitted, "but it is honest." Quote, "For a long moment, they simply stood there, the millionaire, who had forgotten how to breathe, and the artist who painted the air he needed. Then, the sound of the ocean filled the silence, soft and endless, as if the sea itself was listening. That evening, the resort came alive with soft jazz and the clinking of crystal glasses. Guests in linen and silk filled the open-air restaurant that overlooked the Pacific. Fairy lights shimmered in the palms, and the ocean stretched into darkness like spilled ink. Lila Hart sat alone near the edge of the terrace, her sketchbook open beside an untouched glass of water. She was supposed to be enjoying her one evening off, but her mind refused to rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him again, the stranger from the wrong suite. His voice calm and his smile a little too kind. Her phone buzzed. A message from her friend Tessa Monroe appeared. "Did you meet anyone interesting yet? Or are you still married to your paintbrush?" Lila laughed quietly and typed back, "Maybe just a tourist with bad directions." She sent the message and looked up only to see that same tourist walk into the restaurant. Grayson Hale, dressed in a simple white shirt and gray slacks, looked completely out of place among the laughing vacationers and investors. Yet somehow, he fit. His presence drew attention without effort. When their eyes met, he smiled like it was the most natural thing in the world and walked straight toward her table. "Miss Hart," he greeted, his tone light but polite. "I was told this was the best seat in the house. Mind if I join you?" Lila hesitated, then nodded. "It is a public table." He sat down, resting his drink carefully. I promise I found it without trespassing this time. She laughed softly. Good to know. For a moment, neither spoke. The night air carried the faint sound of waves, and a musician began playing a slow tune near the bar. Finally, Grayson said, I saw your work again today. The mural in the lobby had stopped me. She blinked, surprised. You actually noticed it? It is hard not to, he said. It feels alive. Her expression softened. That one took me 3 nights. I was afraid they would paint over it before sunrise. Quote, why would they? Because that is what happens when you are paid by the hour, she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. People love what you make, but they forget your name. Grayson looked at her, and for the first time in a long time he did not have an answer. He had spent years chasing recognition, but hers was a quiet struggle he had never known, the kind that came from being invisible. Their waiter passed by, setting down 2 plates neither of them had ordered. Grayson raised a brow. Are these yours? Lila shook her head. No, but they look too expensive to return. He smiled. Then let us consider it a mistake worth keeping. She rolled her eyes, but could not help laughing. You have a strange definition of fate, mister? He paused, caught off guard. For a heartbeat, he almost told her, but something stopped him. Grayson, he said simply. Just Grayson. All right, just Grayson, she teased, closing her sketchbook. What brings you to Crescent Bay? Business or pleasure? He stirred his drink. A little of both, I suppose, mostly trying to remember what pleasure feels like. There was honesty in his tone that disarmed her. She tilted her head. Sounds like a man who works too hard. Guilty, he said quietly. But tonight, this feels different. They talked for over an hour about colors, about the ocean, about nothing and everything. She told him how her mother once said the sea could heal anyone who listened. He told her he was starting to believe that. When the band played its last song, Grayson glanced at his watch and stood. Thank you for letting me crash your table again, he said. Lila smiled. You seem to have a talent for showing up uninvited. I will work on that, he replied. But if I wanted to see your art again, where would I go? She hesitated, then handed him a small card with paint smudges along the edge. The resort keeps a few of my pieces in the gift gallery. He slipped it into his pocket as if it were made of gold. Then I will start there. As he walked away, Lila felt a strange warmth bloom in her chest. She could not explain why, but for the first time in months, she wanted to paint something new, something that looked a lot like the way he had looked at her under those lights. Grayson, walking back to his suite, glanced down at the card in his hand. Lila Hart, he murmured. The name felt right. He did not know it yet, but this quiet artist would soon turn his carefully ordered life into chaos, and somehow into meaning. The next morning, the sky over Crescent Bay was a pale shade of blue, soft and endless. Grayson Hale woke before dawn, restless. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the way Lila Hart had looked at him last night, honest, unguarded, unaware of who he really was. He had met thousands of people who treated him like an opportunity, but she had been different. He dressed simply, traded his pressed suit for a gray t-shirt and khaki pants, and walked down to the resort's art gallery. The glass doors were still locked, but the lights were on inside. Through the window, he saw her. Lila stood before a canvas, paintbrush in hand, barefoot again, her hair tied up carelessly. She was completely focused, lost in color. Grayson watched for a moment, then gently knocked on the glass. She turned, her expression surprised, then softened into a smile. You are early, she said, opening the door. I could say the same, he replied. I thought artists worked late, not early. I do both, she said, laughing. Bills do not pay themselves. He stepped inside, breathing in the scent of paint and coffee. The gallery was small but warm, filled with light. Each piece seemed to hum with quiet life waves, sunsets, faces of strangers, all painted with a tenderness he could feel. Grayson stopped in front of one. This one, he said, pointing to a small canvas of the ocean at dusk. It feels familiar. Lila glanced over his shoulder. That was the view from Suite 407, she said. I started it after, the wrong room incident. He smiled. So, I became part of your art. Only as a funny story, she teased. Do not let it go to your head. He chuckled, then turned serious. You are very talented, Lila. Have you ever shown your work outside of this resort? She shook her head. Not really. I sent applications to galleries in Los Angeles once, but they never replied. It is hard when you are unknown and broke. Her tone was light, but Grayson could hear the exhaustion underneath. He wanted to help, to tell her that one call from him could open every door she had ever knocked on. But he stayed quiet. Revealing who he was now would destroy whatever fragile honesty they had built. Instead, he said softly, "Sometimes the right people just have not seen your work yet." Quote. Lila looked at him, curious. You talk like someone who knows about opportunity. He smiled faintly. Maybe I have just been lucky. They spent the morning together. He helped her move canvases, held frames while she hung them, even fetched coffee when she forgot to eat. The resort staff glanced curiously. None of them recognized the millionaire in plain clothes, carrying brushes and smiling like a man who finally remembered how. At one point, she noticed a streak of blue paint on his wrist. Congratulations, she said, grinning. You are officially part of the creative team. He looked at the smudge, amused. Does this mean I get paid? Only in caffeine and paint fumes. The easy laughter between them felt effortless, natural. For Grayson, it was disarming. For Lila, it was rare. Around noon, a light rain began to fall, turning the glass walls into silver veils. Lila leaned against the window, watching the drops race down the pane. When I was little, she said softly, I used to think rain was the sky's way of forgiving people. Grayson looked at her, memorizing the shape of her smile. And what do you think now? She hesitated, then said, maybe it still is. He did not reply, but something in his chest shifted, quiet and deep. When they finally stepped outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the world washed and bright. Grayson walked her back toward the staff wing, where the path split between her world and his. She turned to him. Thank you for helping today, she said. He nodded. Thank you for letting me. She hesitated, then added, there is a local art fair tomorrow night. I am showing a few pieces. It is small, nothing fancy, but you could come if you want. I would like that, he said simply. As she walked away, Grayson stayed standing under the dripping palms, the ocean wind tugging at his shirt. He had built an empire on data and precision, but for the first time his life felt beautifully uncertain. And somewhere deep down, he wondered if fate really did know what it was doing the night it sent him to the wrong suite. The following evening, the resort buzzed with the sound of rain against the rooftops and music drifting from the nearby pier. Crescent Bay's annual local art fair was small but full of warmth rows of tents, twinkle lights, and the scent of coffee and salt water. Lila Hart stood behind her modest booth, arranging her paintings with care. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the last frame. She had shown her work before, but never like this, never knowing that one of her guests might actually matter. She had told herself not to expect Grayson to come. Men like him, polite, mysterious, well-dressed, usually vanished like summer storms. Still, she found herself glancing toward the entrance every few minutes. At 7:30, a shadow appeared under the lights. Grayson Hale stood at the edge of the fair, an umbrella in one hand, his other shoved casually into his pocket. He looked completely out of place and perfectly at home all at once. When their eyes met, she smiled in disbelief. "You came," she said as he stepped under her tent. "I told you I would," he replied. His voice carried warmth that cut through the cool night air. "And I never break a promise." He walked slowly along the display, taking in each painting. The way he studied them made her pulse quicken, not as a critic, but as someone trying to understand the person behind the color. "These are beautiful," he said finally. "There is so much light in them, even the sad ones." Lila laughed softly. "Maybe because painting is the only time I feel like I can breathe." Grayson's eyes lingered on her for a moment longer than he meant to. "Then you should never stop." A small crowd gathered as the evening went on. A few tourists bought postcards, a couple asked for commissions. Grayson stood quietly by her side, helping when someone dropped a frame or asked for change. He never said who he was, never corrected anyone who assumed he was her assistant. At one point, a local reporter approached, snapping photos of the booths. "You two make a good team," the woman said brightly. "Are you partners?" Lila's cheeks flushed. "No, just friends." Grayson smiled. "For now," he added softly, so only she could hear. When the fair wound down, rain began again, gentle, steady, cleansing. Grayson helped her pack the canvases into their cases, his shirt damp, his sleeves rolled. She caught herself watching him, the way his laughter came so easily now. "Thank you for coming," she said as they loaded the last crate. He shook his head. "Thank you for reminding me that the world is bigger than conference rooms and deadlines." Lightning flickered faintly over the ocean, followed by the distant roll of thunder. Lila hugged her sketchbook close. "I should get these inside before the rain ruins everything." "I will walk you," he said. They walked together through the wet streets back to the resort. The rain soaked their hair and clothes, but neither hurried. When they reached the entrance, she stopped under the awning. "This is me," she said, half laughing, half breathless. Grayson nodded, his eyes searching hers. "Lila, tonight your art did something I have not felt in years. It made me quiet." She tilted her head, smiling softly. "Is that a good thing?" "It is the best thing," he said. For a long heartbeat, neither moved. Then, as if remembering who they were, the artist with paint under her nails and the stranger she barely knew, they stepped back, the moment folding into silence. "Good night, Grayson," she whispered. "Good night, Lila," he replied. When he walked away, she watched him until the rain blurred his figure into the silver night, wondering why something that had started by mistake was beginning to feel so right. The following morning, sunlight streamed through the glass walls of the resort, glimmering off the ocean like shards of silver. Grayson Hale stood on his balcony, coffee in hand, watching the waves crash below. He had a meeting scheduled that day, another round of investors, another polished pitch, but for the first time he did not want to go. His thoughts kept drifting back to the rain, the fair, and the look on Lila Hart's face when she had thanked him under the awning. Caleb Rowan arrived promptly at 9, tablet in hand. "You are supposed to be on a video call in 20 minutes, he said. "But judging by that look, you have other plans." Grayson smiled faintly. "Maybe I do." Caleb studied him, brow raised. "You have that expression again, the one you had before Halotech existed. You were thinking about something reckless." "Not reckless," Grayson replied, "just human." Quote, across the resort, Lila was cleaning up her booth materials, sorting through canvases still damp from the rain. The fair had not made her rich, but it had made her seen. She had sold 3 small paintings, enough to cover her mother's next hospital bill. Still, her thoughts were far from money. They were on Grayson, the stranger who showed up without warning and made her believe her work mattered. She looked down at her sketchbook. On the last page, she had drawn him from memory, his quiet smile, the way his hair curled slightly when it was wet. She laughed at herself, shaking her head. "You are hopeless," she muttered. Late that afternoon, as she carried a new canvas to the gallery, she found him waiting near the entrance. He looked different, less polished, more real. His sleeves were rolled, and his eyes were bright. "You are hard to find," he said. "I work better when no one is watching," she replied, surprised but not unhappy to see him. "What brings you here again, Grayson?" He hesitated, then said, "I wanted to show you something." He held out a folded newspaper from Los Angeles. On the front page was a feature, "Rising Local Artist Captures the Soul of Crescent Bay." Beneath the headline was a photo of her mural, the one in the resort lobby, and her name printed below. Lila gasped softly. "Where did you get this?" "I made a few calls," he said. "The resort's PR team loved your work. I just made sure the right people saw it." She stared at him, speechless. "You did this?" "I only opened the door," he said gently. "You walked through it." Emotion flickered across her face. Gratitude, disbelief, something deeper. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you reminded me that art still matters," he said. "That people still matter." She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "You talk like someone trying to fix something inside himself." "Maybe I am," he admitted. They stood in silence for a moment, the world around them quiet except for the hum of the sea. Then, softly, she said, "Thank you, Grayson. You did not have to do any of this." "I know," he replied. "That is why it feels right." As the evening light deepened, Grayson walked her along the boardwalk. The wind lifted her hair, and the horizon burned gold. For the first time in years, he felt present. No deadlines, no noise, only the rhythm of the tide and the sound of her laughter. When they reached the end of the pier, Lila looked out at the water. "It is strange," she said. "A week ago, you were just a stranger in the wrong room." Grayson smiled, his voice quiet. Maybe that was the only way fate could get our attention. She looked at him, sunlight reflecting in her eyes. For a long moment, neither spoke. Somewhere between the ocean breeze and the fading light, something unspoken settled between them, something that felt dangerously close to love. 2 days later, the resort prepared for its grand charity gala, an annual event hosted by Halotech to fund coastal conservation. Lila Hart had been invited as a guest artist, her mural now displayed in the main hall. She had hesitated before accepting, not realizing that the man who had changed her week was the same one whose company's name was printed on every banner. That evening, she stood at the edge of the ballroom, wearing a simple navy dress that she had borrowed from the resort's wardrobe department. The chandeliers shimmered like captured stars. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, and laughter echoed beneath the music. Lila felt like a misplaced brushstroke on a perfect canvas. She turned to leave when a voice behind her stopped her. "Lila." She froze. Grayson Hale stood only a few feet away, dressed in a black suit, composed but uneasy. For a second, her mind refused to understand. The man she had shared coffee with, the one who carried paintbrushes and walked in the rain, was the host of this entire event. Her voice came out a whisper. You are Halotech?" Grayson nodded slowly. "I wanted to tell you, but I did not know how." "You crate. You lied," she said, her voice breaking just enough to hurt. "All this time, you let me believe you were just another guest." He took a step forward, but she backed away. "Lila, please. I never meant to trick you. I just needed one part of my life where people did not see me as a headline or a wallet. When I met you, I wanted to know what it felt like to be real again." Her eyes shimmered, reflecting the golden light around them. "So what was this? A project? A distraction from your empire?" "No," he said quietly. "You were the only thing in months that made me forget the empire even existed." But the wound was open. Lila shook her head, the disbelief and betrayal twisting together. "You could have trusted me with the truth." "I wanted to," he said, his voice low. "But I was afraid that once you knew, everything between us would change." "Then you were right," she whispered, "because it already has." Quote, around them, the music swelled as if the orchestra itself felt the tension. A reporter nearby began taking photos, recognizing the powerful CEO and the unknown artist in the same frame. Grayson noticed the flash, turned sharply, and called for the cameras to stop, but it was too late. The image of him reaching for her hand had already been captured. Lila stepped back, tears threatening but never falling. "You do not understand what it feels like to be invisible, and then suddenly seen only because of who sees you." "Lila, please." She cut him off. "Enjoy your gala, Mr. Hale." Her voice was calm, but the hurt in her eyes was louder than any music. She turned and walked out through the grand doors, her heels echoing across the marble floor. Grayson stood motionless, surrounded by lights and people who suddenly felt like strangers. Caleb approached quietly from the crowd. "Do you want me to follow her?" he asked. Grayson shook his head slowly. "No," he said, staring at the mural on the far wall, the one painted with her hands, glowing under the chandeliers. "If I have learned anything from her, it is that some things cannot be fixed with power. You have to earn the right to be forgiven." Quote. The night carried on around him, but for Grayson Hale, the world had gone silent again, just as it had before he ever walked into the wrong suite and found the only person who made him feel human. Days passed after the gala, and the headlines spread faster than the waves that once calmed them both. Millionaire CEO and unknown artist steal the spotlight at Halotech Gala. Lila Hart tried to ignore the noise, but every article used her face beside his name. Her phone never stopped ringing. Reporters, sponsors, gallery owners suddenly eager to meet the girl who had captured the attention of Grayson Hale. But fame felt heavy, not flattering. She packed her brushes, left Crescent Bay, and moved back to her small apartment in Oregon. The silence there was familiar, almost comforting. She painted again, but the colors looked different now, colder, uncertain. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Grayson buried himself in work, but nothing felt right anymore. Meetings blurred together. Profits climbed, but he felt hollow. Every decision reminded him of the night he saw her walk away, her name echoing in a ballroom full of applause that meant nothing. One morning, Caleb Rowan entered his office holding a small envelope. "This came from Crescent Bay," he said. Grayson opened it. Inside was a photograph of the mural Lila had painted the ocean at dusk, endless and forgiving. On the back, in her handwriting, were 4 words: "Do not lose the light." Quote. He stared at it for a long time, then stood abruptly. "Cancel my meetings," he said. Caleb blinked. "All of them?" "Yes," Grayson replied, his voice steady. "All of them." 2 days later, a quiet art studio in Portland received an unexpected visitor. The door opened, and Lila looked up from her easel, her heart catching at the sight of him. He looked different, no suit, no entourage, no pretense. Just Grayson. "What are you doing here?" she asked softly. He stepped closer, holding the photograph. "I came to return this. It reminded me of who I was when you met me, the man who laughed for the first time in years." Lila folded her arms, trying to guard the ache in her chest. "You have your world back, Grayson. You do not need mine." "I do not want my world back," he said. "I want to rebuild it with honesty this time." She searched his face, uncertain whether to believe him. "People like you do not start over," she whispered. "Then, let me be the first," he said quietly. "I cannot erase the lie, but I can prove the truth." For a moment, the studio fell silent, except for the ticking of a small clock on the wall. Then she sighed, the tension in her shoulders easing just a little. "You have one chance, Grayson. Do not waste it." He nodded, relief flooding through him. "I will not," he said. "This time, I want to earn you, not surprise you." Goy. Outside, rain began to fall softly against the window, the same way it had the night they first spoke. For the first time in weeks, Lila smiled not with forgiveness yet, but with possibility, and that was enough. 6 months later, the waves of Crescent Bay rolled gently under a summer sky. The resort had reopened its gallery after renovation, and the main exhibit was titled "The Art of Second Chances." Guests lingered near the entrance, admiring a large canvas of the ocean at twilight signed simply, "Lila Hart." Lila stood by the display, calm but nervous, her hands clasped together. This time, she was not a staff artist, she was the headliner. The room was filled with light, and for once she allowed herself to breathe. From across the crowd, a familiar voice spoke. "You kept the title I suggested." She turned, her heart lifting as she saw Grayson Hale standing beside her. He looked the same but different, less armor, more heart. The world knew him again as the CEO of Halo Tech, but tonight he was just the man who had once walked into the wrong suite. "I did," she said softly, "because it was right." Cub. He handed her a small framed sketch. Inside was the first drawing she had ever made at the resort, the sea, the sky, and the faint outline of a figure standing on the balcony. At the bottom, in her own handwriting, were the words he had found on that night months ago. "Someday, I will have a studio of my own." Grayson smiled. "I thought it should hang where it all began." Lila blinked back tears. "How did you even keep this?" "I never throw away the things that change my life," he said quietly. The music swelled behind them, soft and bright. Outside, the sunset melted into gold across the ocean. He reached into his pocket and took out a small box, opening it to reveal a simple silver ring. No headlines, no contracts, just you and me, and the truth this time. Lila looked up at him, eyes shining. "Are you sure?" "Completely," he said. "Because the best mistake I ever made was walking into your world." She laughed through her tears, nodding as he slipped the ring onto her finger. As the guests applauded and the waves whispered against the shore, The story that had begun with a wrong door ended exactly where it belonged, with a promise, a quiet kiss, and a love that had finally found its home. Hello everyone. Please subscribe and turn on the bell to support our channel. It's free and helps us a lot. Where are you watching from? Tell us below. Thank you very much.